If you're new to my channel, I'd like to extend to you a warm welcome. Thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you find the information here to be informative. And if you're a returning viewer, by all means, thank you for coming back. You know, I always say the tide changes so frequently here on these YouTube streets. So you always have to acknowledge where your support comes from. And I want you to know I sincerely thank you for your support. Feel free to like and to share this video. And don't forget to subscribe. Well, this is the final video in my month-long series on domestic violence awareness. And as you know, October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and I have covered these videos for the entire month. And as I already mentioned in previous videos, the theme this year is Everyone Knows Someone, alluding to the fact that DV is among us, and many times we simply miss the signals. And again, there's so many cases that are reported, and it's a topic that tends to cause me a lot of anxiety, so I don't cover them very often. But in this video, I want to focus on this case, not just to highlight the senseless killing of a young woman, but to focus on the signals, because many times we often miss them, and they're the ones that can be very detrimental in a person's life. So our story today takes us to the city of Charlotte here in North Carolina. Take a look at the headline. And it reads, we remember Alisha Watts. I'll provide you with a summary here, and as always, I'll place links to a few of the full articles in the description box. Now, back in early August, I discussed the case of this woman here, 31-year-old Samantha Bryant from Robeson County, who had been reported missing by her family on July the 31st. A few days after we became aware of her disappearance, she was found buried in the backyard of her home, connected to a boyfriend, pictured here. His name is Tyrone Brooks. Brooks was subsequently arrested and charged with murder. And it was around that same time we also learned of the disappearance of another woman, and her family members were doing everything possible to keep her story in the news. And that woman was 37-year-old Alisha Watts. She was last seen on July 14 after her family said she left home for a visit to a boyfriend residence in Charlotte. Now, she was not reported missing by her boyfriend. She was reported missing by her family a few days later. Now, so she was last seen leaving that Charlotte home driving her 2023 black Mercedes SUV, and the last time her family heard from her was on July the 16th, 2 days after that. Okay, 2 days after that, her boyfriend was thrust into the spotlight because of something very strange that took place, which later made him a person of interest and had us all wondering just how this story was going to end up. Now, 2 days after Alisha Watts' family last heard from her, police found her automobile and they had their first encounter with her boyfriend, 51-year-old James Dunmore, picture here, and he was found unresponsive in Alisha Watts' black SUV. The car was found in the parking lot of a DMV in an area that's frequented by police. So he was unresponsive in the woman's SUV, but she was nowhere in sight. It was later reported that James Dunmore had attempted to take his own life by allegedly overdosing on blood pressure medication. And this is just a sidebar from me. Of all the areas to allegedly overdose, he chose an area frequented by police. So was this somewhat of a deliberate plan? Maybe this was a plan to make sure that somebody would find him, allegedly. And the following day, Alisha Watts' family reported her missing, and that was now July the 19th, and the family took their concerns directly to the media. From the very beginning, it was clear they were not going to sit idly by and wait for the police. They took their case to the media themselves. They were sharing with the public a timeline of when they last saw and heard from Alisha Watts and their concerns pertaining to her disappearance. They wanted the public to know who she was and that they had concerns about the lack of contact. And it was not long after that her family reported her missing that James Dunmore, Alisha Watts' boyfriend, he became a person of interest. And that is really to be expected. Police searched his home looking for evidence. The police said at that time they said that the search was not related to any inside knowledge. They were just trying to cover all bases. And as we all know, Whenever a person is missing, they always begin looking closer to home. And then again, if they had any idea of a suspect, they were definitely not sharing that information with the public. And I have to give Alisha Watts' family a lot of credit for constantly keeping this case in the spotlight. They created flyers, they had prayer vigils, they held press conferences over and over. They were also sharing their frustrations with police, especially because they felt police was not doing enough or not giving them the answers they were looking for. What was actually said is that they felt that they were being kept in the dark, and I'm sure police really could not tell them everything that they knew. But they still kept their case alive and kept reaching out to the public in whatever ways they could. But they definitely did not sit on the sidelines, and they certainly did not give up hope of ever finding her. And as the search for Alisha Watts continued and everyone began focusing on her boyfriend as a person of interest in her disappearance, there were now revelations that James Dunmore had a history of having prior contact with low officials. Police say they had been to his home many times in the past for issues ranging from welfare checks to domestic violence. Friends say prior violence had been directed against Alisha Watts. I'm not sure if her family had prior knowledge of this, but at least one of her friends knew. But I never did hear her family accuse him of anything openly. They never said he was a suspect. Now, I'm sure they may have had thoughts and they may have said so quietly, but at no time did they ever make any accusations against him in public. And also, I'm sure police had more than one interview with James Dunmore, but they also did not make public any disclosure from those interviews. And there were more revelations to come. Apparently, James Dunmore had a wife, not an ex wife, but a wife. Yep, he was married. And family members said they had no idea that he was a married man. In a police recording from this past May, James Dunmore had called the police to say his wife and members of her family were removing items from his home when they thought he was not in the house. And there had to have been some type of altercation because the judge granted that same wife a restraining order against him. Now, that was in May, and Alisha Watts went missing around the middle of July. Interesting. Now, a records review by another news media led to revelations that Dunmore had a lengthy criminal history to include kidnapping, stalking, and domestic violence. Now, how much of this Alisha Watts knew, we will never know, but I have to tell you one thing. This give reason to conduct background checks on folks before you enter into a relationship with them. Now, find out as much as you can before those emotional ties are established. But the family kept focused on keeping this story alive in the news and hoping that their loved one would be found alive, but they certainly were not prepared for what was to come later. Now, in an area that had previously been searched several times by police, police were now using cell phone pins and cadaver dogs when they came upon human remains. The remains were located in Norman Cemetery, Montgomery County, which is approximately 2 hours from Charlotte, where she was last seen, and about a 20-minute drive from where Alisha Watts actually lived. Police immediately announced there was a high suspicion that the remains they found would be those of Alisha Watts, and this was later confirmed. Now, they found those remains on August 24th, and police believed her body had been in that area since around July 18th, which is when she was initially reported missing. And at their next news conference, police announced that a warrant had been issued for the arrest of James Dunmore for the murder of Alisha Watts. And this was no surprise. The minute many of us learned of his domestic violence past, we suspected he probably had something to do with her disappearance, and it was confirmed. And we also watched as police arrived at his home and took him into custody. And as sad as it all seemed, there was a sense of relief. At least investigators never gave up on finding her. They were able to find her body and return her to her grieving family. Meanwhile, James Dunmore remains in the Montgomery County Jail on a first-degree murder charge. Initially, he was denied bond, but after a recent court appearance, he was issued a bond of $1 million. And as expected, the family of Alisha Watts are not happy about that decision. But at least now, she's charged, and there's a system in place to hold him accountable. We also learned that he will not be facing the death penalty. And as disappointing as this may seem, many of us are saying, well, why not? But as disappointing as it may seem, I'm sure the DA weighed all the facts before coming to that conclusion. At least we know he's locked up where we believe he belongs. And in the meantime, the family of Alisha Watts have pledged to keep her memory alive through advocacy work in the area of domestic violence. We wish them well. And that's all I have for you right now. Feel free to leave me a comment below and let me know what you think about this video. And by all means, feel free to like it and to share it. And if you haven't done so already, I want to invite you to subscribe to my channel by clicking on that red subscribe button. It's on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. And if you click on the bell that looks just like this one, that's the notification bell. If you click on that notification bell, you'll be the first to know whenever a new video is uploaded. I thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.